Hello and welcome to the Weather Network's live stream coverage of Hurricane Milton as it barrels towards the Florida coast. We've got a great team out there in place ready to cover this storm for you. We've got in studio Tyler Hamilton with us and our own storm chaser Mark Robinson as well. I want to get right into it, Mark. Now Milton is already a historic storm. It's the fastest developing storm on record in the Gulf, and so I want to start already living up to that name right now, Mark, and as it actually starts to increase speed as it heads towards where you are there in Florida. Walk us through that right now.
Yeah, you know what, Michael, the amazing thing about this was that this, when we were talking about this live stream earlier, this was just supposed to be a setup talking about what's coming, and it's arrived. I mean, what you're looking at back behind me are some of the inner bands of Hurricane Milton, and this is, we're getting very close to that we can see on radar. We can see that eye, and I think the frightening thing for a lot of people was the potential for this one to go up through Tampa Bay and really drive that storm surge into Tampa Bay. It does look like it's now going to be south of Tampa Bay and sort of coming into the Sarasota region. And so we're watching for the surge down here. It's actually a really good situation for Tampa itself because they're not looking at that potential 15 feet of storm surge.
Absolutely. One thing I want to make certain that we mention, I know a lot of people out there watching right now are going to be concerned about perhaps their own properties, about people that they know who live in Florida as well. And we're here to answer your questions. So as we move throughout this live stream, make certain that you're sending us those questions. We're going to get those answers for you as well. And so, Tyler, I wanted to head over to you for a minute. Let's get a look at where we are with this hurricane off the coast.
Yeah, so I'll give everyone here, let's get caught up to speed on the stats of Hurricane Milton. So we're now down to a Category 3, but Milton is likely pushing a Category 4, Category 5 storm surge. The barometric pressure has risen, but we've noticed the wind field expand greatly over the next 24 hours just before landfall. So we've sped up the timing of the forecast landfall to be kind of in that 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. You can see the wind speeds in and around Tampa Bay as we push 6, 7, 8 p.m. this evening, well over hurricane force. And this is what it's going to come down to for Tampa Bay. A very volatile situation in terms of the storm surge and direction because they'll be on that northern eye wall. We are forecasting a surge into Tampa Bay and Old Tampa Bay, but once that lifts late Wednesday evening, you'll get reverse surge and some of those barrier islands, treasure islands dealing with catastrophic, unsurvivable storm surge. And where I'm most concerned about the storm surge is exactly where StormHunter Mark Robinson is. This is 9:10 p.m. Those inner eye wall winds will be pushing ashore near Sarasota. That's where the landfall is forecast. But as you head down the coast, Charlotte Harbor, I am deeply concerned about catastrophic storm surge, 3 or 4 meters for Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, and even as far south as Fort Myers. This track is highly unusual coming in from the west to east. You look at some past tracks over the past 5 or 6 years. Hurricane Ian, $118.5 billion in damage. And when we take a look at the Tampa region, if you move to Tampa over the past 20 years, 30 years, Charlie might come to mind. Yeah, but we have had a significant heads up with this one. Charlie really rapidly intensified as it approached the coast of western Florida. Right now, we've had 4 or 5 days of a heads up that this is going to be a really big deal. And in terms of the population center I'm most concerned about, Tampa Bay, Sarasota, down to Fort Myers. And we still don't know exactly where this storm will come ashore. When you take a look at this track, it's smoothed, of course, by the National Hurricane Center, Michael, but as we know, hurricanes wobble as they approach. So the actual track is more like this. It'll wobble in and out. So we don't even know exactly that part of Florida's coastline that it'll run ashore.
Absolutely. And trying to pinpoint that from a forecasting perspective is very difficult. And I know that can be frustrating for a lot of viewers out there because there's a lot of hope that it's switching further away from me. Now it's coming closer to me. So that is a lot for people to consider as we track this storm for them. We took a quick live look there at Naples, Florida, you could really see that that storm surge starting to make its way in. Now, as we start talking about storm surge again, you can actually see that the storm surge warnings make their way all the way down to the tip of Florida, all the way back up towards the Panhandle. And so I want to head back out to Mark there for a moment. I want to get an idea from Mark of where you are right now and get an idea of where you're stationed right now. Give me a walk around there a little bit and show me what kind of coverage you have and things like that, how you're staying protected as we head into the storm.
Yeah, Mike, I want to show you. I'd love to show you. It's crazy. We're trying to get everything set up, and someone just, there a lot of cars are parked in this parking garage that you can see. Now we're about 5 stories up, and we're in downtown Sarasota right now. I believe we're looking towards the. I believe that is towards the east. And then out back towards, if we're looking west, that's where the hurricane is going to come in. So the ocean is that way. This is looking inland, but you can see the bands beginning to the wind's beginning to push past this way. But you're about as safe as we can get, well above the storm surge and inside a parking garage. This is going to be able to take whatever Milton's going to throw at us. The big issue, of course, with this and trying to get it all set up is it's very difficult to do anything in a hurricane. So just trying to get the cameras, up and ready, getting everything done, very, very tricky. But what I'm more concerned about is people that are trying to do things like getting to a shelter, trying to, get stuff. Oh, I forgot this, to do this in my house. Hopefully at this point, I would say, leave it alone. Don't worry about it. It'll be there after the hurricane. And if you're not in a shelter at this point, just hunker down where you are. As long as you're not in a storm surge area, hide from the winds, flee from the water. That's what I've been repeating all day long. If you can hunker down, or if you're in a shelter that you're not in a storm surge area, that is probably the safest place you can be. For us, this parking garage is the safest place we can be.
Absolutely. Well, I'm obviously glad that you guys found somewhere good and safe to weather out this storm. But you do bring up a really great point. That window of planning and preparation is running out very quickly. We're just almost completely out of time here. And you're right. Things will be there when you get back,
Yeah, I think we're out of time. The honest, when we drove down from Tampa down here to Sarasota, it's only about a 45-minute drive. And we got into the edge of some of those bands, and it was a little touch and go in that drive. We've also been seeing significant tornadoes across the peninsula, not just like little small ones in the bands, but big supercell looking tornadoes doing damage across Florida. So that's one of the things that the storm is throwing at us here. Now I think we're beyond the tornado danger part of it here in Sarasota, but never say never. Always be prepared for the worst case scenario, and that way you're always pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely, Mark. That is for sure. And I want to take a quick look at some of the major hurricane landfalls that we've had since 2017 and talk a little bit about, I'm going to bring Tyler in here in just a second, and talk a little bit about, it's been a long, long time since we've, seen a hurricane come through, and especially a major hurricane. And, the track that we're seeing with Milton is bringing it sort of in uncharted territories when we're talking about infrastructure and things like that. There's a lot of infrastructure and things that have been built over the last 100 years or so. So we really don't know sort of how some of this area is really going to take what's coming to them.
And it's a double whammy, Michael, because you look at the damage that Helene left. We had record-breaking storm surge from Hurricane Helene in Tampa Bay. To give you an idea what that was about 1.5 meters of storm surge. Currently, National Hurricane Center is forecasting nearly double that for Tampa Bay, and then further south towards where Mark Robinson is, that's 3 to 4.5 meters. So I want you to all visualize what that means for Tampa Bay if that forecast ends up verifying by the NHC. This is it here. There's that 1-story storm surge that caused significant flooding in and around the barrier islands, Treasure Island, for example, in the Tampa Bay metropolitan area. We're going to be adding 1+ meter associated with this. And yeah, that time to evacuate and that window to really flee is closing quickly, if not closed completely. So you want to hunker down as the timing of this system has really sped up. Now, I'm still greatly concerned about the flood potential in and around Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is even susceptible to flash flooding with thunderstorms in the summertime. Right now, with that track just south of Tampa Bay, that means the heaviest rain bands will be pushing on an axis from Tampa to Orlando to Daytona Beach. Of course, that is a highly populated region of Florida, and we're looking at 200 to 400 millimeters of rain, with all of that falling in a window essentially of about 24 hours. So, and then, as Mark mentioned, we have to contend with the threat of tornadoes embedded on some of those outer bands, so we're keeping an eye on that at this point. And if we take a look at the Sarasota situation here, this is what we're seeing in terms of a live shot at the beach. That surf really increasing, Michael.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point there around the storm surge. And one of the major contributing factors to that storm surge is the minimum pressure that we're seeing. That minimum pressure sort of brings up that water and it continues to stack, and you've got those winds that are pushing that onshore, and you've got places within the bays there that are really going to be hit hard because there's really not anywhere else for that water to go other than inland. And so, we're gonna wait and see just how much water is inundating those regions. Now, Mark, give us an idea about how far off the ground you are, where you are right now, and away from that storm surge.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to take a look over. So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories up, which is, I got to be 50 feet. So, I'm not worried about the storm surge at all where we are. But we were down on the ground earlier, and we'll probably go down, later on and show you as the surge begins to really come in. Whether it makes it to this parking garage or not, we're not totally sure. But we were down on the beach, right on the front near the port there, and we were at low tide, and the water had already come up right to the edge of those docks. So that means that as the tide comes in, that water is going to rise both from the surge and from the tide. So we may see more surge than we were originally expecting here in Sarasota.
So, Mark, you've covered dozens of these dozens of these hurricanes. I've been out there covering lots of these hurricanes as well. And what is it about this storm? They're all so different. And there's always that level of anticipation as you wait for the storm to arrive. What is it about this storm? What is it about Milton that has you most concerned?
You know what? It's the surge. Like you and Tyler were talking about it. It's we still aren't 100% sure whether that surge is going to go into Tampa Bay or not. And if it does, we could see catastrophic damage to Tampa. Now, I've got my fingers crossed at this point. We're seeing sort of the better case scenario, which is the eye and those winds, onshore winds coming in south of the bay, which means that the bay is going to get a little bit of that offshore flow, which will really tamp down the potential for surge. Looking at what the National Hurricane Center has got, you can see where they've sort of brought the surge potential down. But this has been changing. These changes all the time. One of the experiences I've had, and Michael, you've probably had the same experience as I have, having gone through a bunch of these. I find that these hurricanes tend to hook right as they come onshore, and in this case would mean that it hooks a little bit further south as it sort of makes interaction with land. That will push it even further south of Tampa Bay, but that's not a for sure. It's just a personal experience that I've had. Have you found the same thing?
Absolutely. No, you're right. I have found the same thing. But the thing about a hurricane that's coming in from this direction and sort of crossing the peninsula like this, and Tyler, you can probably speak to this as well, the topography of Central Florida right there is really not going to help when it comes to slowing this thing down, right?
No, not at all. And if you think, it's not like filling up a pool. There's going to be an immense amount of debris in terms of this storm surge as it moves inland. We're not talking about a calm lake, for example. We're talking about whitecaps, some remnant debris from Hurricane Helene, fuel spills, gasoline, diesel. I'm sure you've seen this kind of situation before, Mark, in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got a chance to go to drive around Davis Island just in Tampa, and there was just piles and piles and piles of debris on that island. It's relatively very close to sea level. They had 6 feet of water there, so it's about, I believe, about 1.5 meters of water surge from Helene. They were just beginning their renovations, beginning to sort of get in there and try to clean up, and immediately, no, got to evacuate, got to leave everything there, and away you go. The problem with that is that then gets picked up by surge and driven inland and acts as, little battering rams that are going to hit the houses again, and that, of course, is a big concern. When we were here in Sarasota, we just got a chance to walk down by the port, and there quite literally are boats sitting in the park from Helene, and they haven't been able to move. There's half-sunken boats out there. There's a bunch of boats at anchor that I don't think people have had time to prepare those boats yet, which means that those are going to get picked up and driven inland with the surge coming into here. And those are big boats. We're not talking about little rowboats. We're talking about yachts, big, gigantic power boats, big sailboats. All of those likely to come inland with that surge when it comes in. If we do get that, 3 meters of surge here in Sarasota, we're going to have a lot of boats parked on the roads instead of out in the water.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Now, Tyler, let's head over to you real quick and get just a quick idea of where we are right now as far as timing for the hurricane for landfall.
Yeah, so we'll take a look at what the official National Hurricane Center has for their cone of uncertainty. So this is forecast kind of around that 10 p.m. They have it crossing just in and around Sarasota. So the timing is sped up. You go back about 24 hours ago, we were forecasting this eye of Hurricane Milton to cross the region of Sarasota or just north, kind of around that 1 a.m. hour. So we're going to look for that 9-10 p.m. time frame as that eye wall comes ashore, likely as a major hurricane, making Hurricane Milton the 10th major hurricane since 2017 to make landfall in the Gulf of Mexico, and it has an unusual characteristic because this is the main development region. The typical track we would see in early October, storms would generally start in the western Caribbean Sea, not the western Gulf of Mexico. So that is a big red flag with this storm. Some of the warmest sea surface temperatures in the entire world are really situated in the Gulf of Mexico, and that has really allowed this atmosphere to rapidly intensify. Now, we are seeing some weakening. We're down to a Category 3 from a maximum of Category 5. At one point, the storm's pressure was below 900 millibars. We've now risen to 950, but the storm surge already baked in, pushing in a higher category storm surge, 3 to 4.5 meters. Keeping an eye on the tidal forecast in and around western Florida. We're checking a high tide early tomorrow morning, pre-dawn Thursday, but only 0.9 meter. That storm surge is forecast to be really much more than that. And this is the rainfall. I am concerned about flash flooding in and around the city of Tampa Bay. These rainfall rates, 50 plus millimeters an hour in their heaviest pockets. So it's incredibly torrential, these bands of rain. Finally, this storm will push out towards off the Carolinas by the time we head into early Thursday. But I'm afraid we're going to be waking up to a lot of communities on the west coast of Florida with catastrophic damage and millions without power across the state.
Absolutely. Now, there's probably a lot of people out there watching right now, and they're thinking, oh, thank goodness that we've stepped back to a Category 3, and that's just not the case. Those, we are at a Category 3, but those impacts are still going to be felt. Now, we're taking a live look right now at Tampa. I've got a camera right now in Tampa. It's getting dark out there. It's really very difficult to see. Visibility is very low. And then we've got a driving shot here heading towards St. Petersburg. Now, what you have to remember is these bands are already making their way onto the shore. So these impacts are already being felt. Right now, as we still await for this storm to come on shore, and people are continuing to, monitor the difference between a Cat 3, a Cat 4, a Cat 1, all of these storms are different. So you can't compare a Category 3 that you have experienced in the past to what this storm is going to bring. So don't rest on those laurels. stay safe, stay alert if you are riding out this storm. Now, Mark, this brings up a good point that I want to talk to you about, because you and I have both experienced these as well. These overnight landfalls bring on a total other sense of doom and danger, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Helene is a great example, you know, and that was a week and a half ago. I mean, I'm kind of amazed. I'm already back down here again. It was a night landfall, and you could hear the booms, the crashes, the bangs, and you could see the sky light up with those green power flashes. Those transformers explode as the wires touch and go down. Power out. Suddenly you're in complete blackness. That is frightening, and that is like your brain makes up what has just happened. You don't know what happened. Whereas like here, you can look out and say, oh, you know, a roof just came off, and we know that that's what happened. But at night, it's that much more dangerous. And of course, you know, when we were in Helene, we actually rescued 2 people that were they thought they could get ahead of the storm. And they had panicked, saw our lights where we were in the shelter, and basically tried to turn left to get towards us, but their car was being shoved sideways. They managed to get to us, and they were in shock that what was going on, because they could not see. They did not know what was coming at them, and that's what made it extra frightening for them. Now, take that story and blow it up 1,000-fold. And that's what I'm concerned about, because we're in a major urban area with this storm. So lots of people are thinking, oh, I got to go get this. I got to go get to my girlfriend's house, my boyfriend's house, something like that. I'm going to say, stay where you are. If you're in shelter, stay in shelter. Don't go out. Remember, even small tree branches can weigh hundreds of pounds. We don't want to see anybody hurt in this. I mean, the storm is already going to do enough damage. I don't want to see deaths as well.
Absolutely, and I'm certain those people that you were able to help during Helene really felt like those lights were a beacon of hope in that time. Not everyone gets, you know, that rescue. Not everyone gets that opportunity to get out of the storm. It's a very, very serious and potentially deadly situation out there. So you have to really take these storms seriously. Tyler, I want to bring you in here now and just sort of talk about what are the main impacts that we're really expecting to see from this storm. What are the key aspects?
Storm surge by far, Michael, it is the most deadly aspect of a hurricane, and it's not really survivable at its peak in this setup. So hopefully everyone has evacuated and listened to those emergency management officials ahead of time. We're noticing the movement increase northeast at 27 kilometers an hour. Wind speed steady right now at 200 kilometers an hour. So this right now is a Category 3 hurricane. I want to walk through some of the wind speeds forecast. So expect Metro Tampa to be dealing with wind gusts, tough to comprehend, at 130 to 150 kilometers an hour as this roars ashore. You can imagine most, if not all, of the city of Tampa will be without power associated with this, and the biggest wild card and the lowest confidence forecast is the storm surge threat in and around Tampa Bay. Weather forecasting science is pretty good, but it's not an exact science, and these wobbles, these final several kilometers before it comes ashore, will be key where that most extreme storm surge ends up. National Hurricane Center still putting out a record-breaking storm surge forecast. There's about 3 million people in the Tampa Bay area, St. Petersburg. This is a large chunk of population in the west section, west side of Florida. The winds will slowly ease after the midnight hour just to 80 or 100 kilometers an hour. So, you know, if that was happening in Toronto, that would be a big deal. But further down the coast, this is where we are extraordinarily concerned about storm surge. Michael, I'll draw here in that purple magenta color. Inglewood, we were watching some live feed, that surf really starting to build in as those outer bands turn to inner bands, and that surge essentially is forced up the coast. That hurricane pushes that water inland. So big red flag, Charlotte Harbor. We have Punta Gorda there, we have Port Charlotte there. These regions are highly susceptible to storm surge, and it is just so unfortunate we're seeing that track from west to east. It's the Achilles heel of Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbor, that population center here. We are highly vulnerable. Hopefully by the time we get into Thursday morning, this storm just doesn't materialize and it's not as strong as we thought. But You know, tons of meteorologists have that sinking feeling in their stomach tracking this storm since Saturday.
Absolutely. And, we are starting to get some viewer questions in right now. We're working on getting those to you. If you have questions, just a reminder for everyone out there, please send them our way. We're getting those ready for you right now, and we'll start answering those questions really soon here. Another live look here at Fort Myers. This is courtesy of EarthCam. You can really see how dark those clouds are rolling in. The sun's starting to set behind those clouds too. So, pretty soon this is going to be a very different situation. But if you look up the clouds right now, you get a sense, an idea of the structure that we're looking at there and the direction of which those clouds are moving. You can really see them moving pretty quickly on the screen there as well. So, Tyler, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about real quick is, for when it comes to, let's say that someone has already, they're worried right now. What's the best thing that they can do if they're riding out this storm at this moment?
Yeah, well, you gotta hope you're in shelter and always on the highest level floor. You can almost follow a tornado protocol, Michael. Get in the most interior room of your house. Mattresses, pillowcases, pillows, all that can work to protect yourself. And this footage right here, this photo from a state trooper, this was some of the flooding we were seeing several hours ago. So we were already dealing with significant flooding reports already streaming into the Tampa area, and this is 6 to 8 hours ahead of the landfall. So that is just showing you how much moisture this hurricane is going to bring onshore over the next several hours.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tyler. Now, let's get a quick check on the stats where we stand right now with Hurricane Milton as it barrels towards the Florida coast. We are right now at a Category 3 hurricane with wind speeds at around 200 kilometers an hour right now. The pressure with this system is now at 950 millibars, and it's moving northeast at 27 kilometers an hour, which is a lot faster than we were expecting to see on this. Now, I do have our first question from an audience member out there. Thank you so much for sending this in. And I think this is a really great question because you hear all this information about evacuation orders, getting out of the path of these storms. And one of our viewers wants to know, are people still in the city? Mark, what are you seeing out there where you are in Sarasota?
Yeah, the answer is yes. There's absolutely people still in the city. We did see people moving around. There was a couple of locals that were quite literally walking their dog down by the water. Now that was before the real, bigger winds began to come in. I'm going to take a quick look. I'm going to just turn around and look to see if I see. I do see a few cars, some lights on in a few places. Sort of looking across the city, I can actually see people in a building over here. But again, one of the things that if you're above that storm surge, you're not going to be dealing with that. You're going to be dealing with the winds. However, if you're in a high-rise building like the one I can see over here with gigantic windows, what I worry about there is the pressure of the winds. If those winds do get up into those 150 kilometer an hour range, you're going to start to see those windows start to break. It's exactly what I saw in Katrina. The higher level we're up in the building, the more those windows just blew right out. So I've got my fingers crossed that the people in that building will be moving to the stairwell if we get into those extreme winds of the eye wall itself.
Mark, so I want to ask you because, you're back there within just a couple of weeks, right? And, Helene really did a number on many areas of Florida. So what's the overall, mentality and mood of the people there in Florida that you see and you talk to?
Exhaustion. They're just exhausted. People were saying, I can't believe we're doing this again. The same thing, it just happened. Why is it happening to us again? And, especially in an area that we don't often see these kinds of hurricanes coming in. I've seen, much more often further, way south of Tampa or north of Tampa up into the Panhandle, but this one's coming straight at Tampa. And I think that's what people are dealing with. They're just like, I can't believe I have to do this again. in our hotel, we actually, a lot of the evacuees from those areas, the wonderful thing about to see there was they all brought their pets. So the hotel was full of dogs, which was great. And I think those people seemed just a touch a little more relaxed. Because they felt like they were in a safe spot, they were well away from the surge, and they were in a nice, comfortable hotel for this. So I turn, though, towards the less fortunate, the people that don't have $1,000, $2,000 to drop on some of these hotels to stay there for a couple of nights. That's the ones I really worry for. Shelters are open. They've been opening shelters in Sarasota, Punta Gorda, Tampa, of course, multiple shelters there. It's probably at this point too late to move. But if the winds aren't too bad and you think, you know what, I'm just in a bad spot, I need to go, go. Just before those big winds begin to come in, you might have a little bit of time still up in Tampa. Wow, okay, sorry, I just heard something go bang. Oh yeah, no, they're starting to see a few little things coming apart in those little gusts, and I think that's just a garage door rattling down there. But this is what we're going to continue to see. Is just as we get into the storm itself, just greater and greater wind speeds, more bangs, more crashes, and at this point, as I was just sort of to jump back to what I was saying before. Shelter is going to be critical for this. Whether you're here in Sarasota or whether you're up in Tampa, you're still going to get those very, very strong winds. Trees are going to be coming down. Branches are going to be coming down. And all I can say at this point is I hope everybody is safe as possible, as safe as they can get.
Absolutely, yeah. That's our wish for everyone out there who's down there weathering this storm. Now, one thing about this hurricane season that has been, I think in some ways sort of unexpected, looking at this setup with the water surface temperatures and things like that. And Tyler, I want to bring you in here and talk to you a little bit about how, we're now into October and we're still seeing, obviously we're still within the hurricane season, but we're seeing these back-to-back storms right into October, and obviously it's having an impact on the mentality of people there in Florida. So let's talk a little bit about, the history of what we see with the storms at this stage in October.
Yeah, and it's a little unusual to have development in the western Gulf of Mexico, but this storm, Hurricane Milton, really got most of its energy from something called the loop current, this warmer region, this warmer current kind of between the Yucatan Peninsula and the western Hispaniola. That region in particular is like fuel for storms, and that is what we saw, this rapid intensification just south of the Yucatan Peninsula. And this intensification was, well, unprecedented. There it is, a new record. It took 49 hours for Tropical Depression Milton to become a Category 5 hurricane. The old record, infamous, very deep Hurricane Wilma back in the Atlantic season of 2005. It took 54 hours to go from a tropical depression to a hurricane. So that is an incredible rapid intensification, and it's what you'd expect with those warmer than normal sea surface temperatures that are really adding fuel. But the most concerning thing about this is the track. You look at these past tracks and we can't find a proxy, unfortunately, for Hurricane Milton. We've got, how much? From Hurricane Easy to Hurricane Charlie, we've got over 200 kilometers of coastline that has not sustained a major hurricane landfall since 1950. And it's tracking in from the northeast. It's about 170, 180 kilometers away from making landfall somewhere between the city of Tampa and Sarasota. And we'll know that final landfall location, Michael, in as little as 6 hours.
That time period is really approaching fast. And so I know a lot of people out there are very anxious as we await for that landfall. And of course, we're going to continue to monitor the situation for you right here on the Weather Network. We're taking a live look right now, courtesy EarthCam at Inglewood, Florida. You can really see how much that water is just churning out there. It's basically almost white out in the ocean as far as you can see. So those are sort of those white caps as that storm surge continues to push on. And I don't know if you can see just down there in the corner of your screen there, you've got a couple of palm trees gives you a sense of the wind that is starting to come in across the region there as well. And there's something that we need to make certain that we mention here. You know, these storms have bands that come in, and they can get, depending on where you are, they can get stronger and stronger. So just because what you're seeing right now, your current situation, you know, that is potentially going to get worse and much, much worse. And I mentioned that we're going to keep you up to date throughout the night on this storm as we approach landfall. We do have, obviously, Mark Robinson down in Sarasota, but he's also joined by our video journalist, Nate Coleman, who's going to be assisting in and covering the storm and helping to keep everyone safe out there. Now, I want to bring Mark Robinson back in here for just a second. Now, Mark, I want to get an idea, a sense from you. You know, are people surprised perhaps that, you know, we're looking at a much earlier landfall than before?
You know, I am. I'm definitely surprised about it. We're definitely, you know, into portions of the hurricane that I did not expect. You know, I was expecting these bands to come in at night. We were talking with a few locals. I think they were sort of, oh, this is coming in faster than we thought. So we're definitely into, or definitely dealing with a lot of people that were shocked about it. But to be quite honest, we haven't seen that many people to talk to. I know that, you know, been hearing on air and you know, sort of some of the radio stations around here, they were talking to people and they were saying, yeah, you know, people are just sort of watching this and saying, this is coming in faster than we thought. We might not have time to finish preparations.
Absolutely. You know, we've got actually some sounds that from some Sarasota residents earlier that you guys were able to speak to and talk to them about preparing ahead of the storm.
And just tell me, why did you decide to stay instead of evacuate here?
We're on the other side of 75, so we should be okay. Just wind and rain is all we're really worried about, not the storm surge. We're down here checking it out pre-storm to see what it's like, because we know it's going to get really bad down here.
And how did you prepare for the storm?
Boarded up, everything's locked down, everything's strapped down, nothing's in the yard, everything's put up. Pool is all taken care of. Yeah, we're hopefully okay.
Yeah, and what do you think is going to happen here?
We're going to be standing in water in about 2 days. It's all going to be flooded. This is all going to get flooded right here. Yeah.
You know, I think one of the key elements that he brought up there about being worried about wind, you know, we just got the latest update. We're still right now at a Category 3 with Milton. And Tyler, you know, we've already touched base on this a little bit, but there's still leftover debris from Helene that with the winds from a Category 3, that's easily going to be picked up and tossed around, right?
Absolutely, Michael, and I just did a little analysis to see how far away the eye is from Sarasota, and yeah, it really has progressed in terms of an earlier timing. That eye is about, the center of the eye is about 90 kilometers southwest of Sarasota, so those storm force and hurricane force winds are really pushing ashore as we speak, and we haven't touched on these wave heights. So as I said, it's not a calm pond or like filling up a pool. The storm surge is vigorous and flows inland like a river. Some of these wave heights here would be more akin to a powerful nor'easter in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We have significant wave heights off the coast of West Florida to be, you know, 8, 10, 12 meters, pushing 30 feet, significant waves. An individual wave maximum reasonable would be, you know, 12, 14, 15 meters in height. That'll be offshore, but still tremendous amount of coastal erosion forecast in those low-lying communities in western Florida. So that eye, as I said, just 90 kilometers southwest of Sarasota as it continues to move just under 30 kilometers an hour towards the northeast.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I think is very striking in this particular graphic right here is you see the range of the peak storm surge forecast. And I want you to take a look particularly at Tampa, where we've got the 2 to 3 meters of storm surge, and Port Charlotte, where we're seeing 2 to 3 meters as well. Those are very concerning areas. And as you take a live look right now at Tampa from our Earth Cam shot there, I mean, you can see that rain is coming down strong. It's actually hitting the camera right there. So we're gonna head out to Mark and get a quick update on the situation. Mark, how's the rain coming down there? What's the situation like right now?
You know what? It's actually gotten quite kind of calm. We've seen that those bands seem to have passed by us, and you can sort of, if you see behind me, you see a little bit of rain. Clouds are moving very, very quickly, but we've really lost that really heavy rain, which is interesting. I've been taking a look on radar and trying to sort of get an idea of what's happening with this. And on the radar, it looks like the southern half of the storm is missing. Whether that's a real thing or whether the radar just is having trouble sort of, getting that southern part of the storm, I don't know yet. You might be able to tell me better as to what's happening there, but it almost seems a bit calm. Now, I can see the eye sort of spinning, and I almost feel like it's stalled out just a little bit, just offshore.
Yeah, for sure. And we're honestly seeing the same thing here as well. I want to take a quick listen to some other Sarasota residents just a little while ago as they continue to prepare for the storm.
And how are you preparing for the storm here? Why didn't you evacuate?
So I'm from Tampa, Florida originally, and then we moved over here. As a Tampa native, we're not scared of hurricanes. We feel like they never come to Tampa. Sarasota, I feel like I'm a little bit worried here, but I'm not scared. Been in Florida my whole life.
And so what are you going to do to ride out of the storm? How did you prepare?
We got water, we got propane tanks, we got gas, we got generators. I think we're going to be fine. We're not really worrying about flooding where we live.
So Mark, what do you think when you hear people planning and riding out a storm like this?
I'm pleased that they're getting ready and that they're taking it seriously. My only concern was they were sort of down at the waterfront when they were talking to us about that, and we go back to something I said earlier, and I'm sure you've heard it 100 times: flee from the water and hide from the wind. If they're far enough away from the surge, they're probably going to be okay in shelter as this storm comes on shore. We are seeing a weakening storm as it's moving towards land, which they tend to do. I mean, they don't usually, hit at a full Category 5. So this is good news for the people in the area that they will be able to ride it out. And I think is the best news for me is that the residents are prepared and ready for this storm.
Now, as you and I both know, riding out a storm like this, on the other side of the storm might not be a comfortable situation without, running water in a lot of instances, without electricity. It can be a really uncomfortable, place to be. Now, Tyler, I want to take it over to you. Now, when we look at the rain accumulation through Friday, these numbers are pretty impressive. Areas up towards, 300 millimeters. So talk to us about what that will do for this region.
Yeah, and it is a very flood-prone, low-lying region, Michael, so we are concerned about the flood threat. But I've just noticed on radar, those outer bands tend to spin, and we're noticing tornado warnings from West Palm Beach all the way up to Orlando. There's about 5 or 6 concurrent tornado warnings. So as West Florida is dealing with surge, damaging winds, torrential rainfall, Eastern Florida is really dealing with tornadic activity. And in terms of the rainfall future products, it's not the total amount, it's how much is going to fall in such a short duration as it crosses Florida through much of Thursday morning, and by Thursday afternoon and evening, it re-enters the Atlantic Ocean. But we have this bull's eye. Unfortunately, there will be significant and extreme flooding risks in and around Tampa Bay, Orlando, Daytona Beach. These are high-resolution computer models that are spitting out 300, 400 millimeters of rainfall. That's 12, 15 inches of rain in such a short duration. So as Tampa Bay has so many unknowns with the storm surge threat, there's less unknowns about the rain on the northern side of this Hurricane Michael. We have high confidence for this region of about 75 or 100 kilometers, 60 miles to 100 miles, dealing with that significant life-threatening amount of rain that can cause flash flooding inland. So it's not just the surge along the coast, it's the flash flooding inland we have to pay extra attention to.
Absolutely. And one of the key indicators for I think for people from Florida when you have a storm like this moving through is Disney World shutting down. That was a big news story this week because they just don't shut down very often. So watching like Disney World, the happiest place on earth, now becoming one of the wettest places on earth right now. I mean, that's pretty significant, for this region. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Milton's expected storm track and the population. Let's take a quick look right here at Inglewood, another shot from the Earth Cam there as well. And actually from just a little while ago when we looked at this last, I can really see the wind has really picked up and those waves are actually starting to look a good bit higher as well. But as we go back to the map on storm track and population here, you could really get an idea of the density of the areas of population. So obviously Miami, Fort Myers, Tampa, and Orlando, but you've got two major population areas that are really in track for this storm. So that's something really important to keep in mind. Now, this is a quick look at the major hurricane landfalls that we've had since 2017. Now, we did have about a decade there that we didn't have. It was we had no major landfalling hurricanes in the U.S. But then since 2017, we've really started to see that activity pick up. And now a lot of these names are going to be really familiar to you. We've got Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Michael, obviously Helene was just a week and a half ago, Idalia, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Ian. The one thing that you want to make certain that you notice about all of these tracks is that Hurricane Milton is coming in at a different angle and a different direction. And I just want to bring Mark in here right now to talk a little bit about what that potentially means from a forecasting perspective when you just don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, it's this one and Helene both were very shocking. Usually we have a week or two, sort of we watch it coming across from Africa, and you can sort of speculate on the forecast as it makes its way through. So we have a few days, or even a week to sort of figure out what it's going to do. These ones popped up, tropical storm to Category 5, incredibly quick, and then they're just on shore. That means that your forecasts are difficult because it's happening so fast, but it's also very, very critical, especially when you're talking about this western side of Florida. If that eye goes just that little bit further north, that's catastrophic damage to Tampa. But if it goes just a bit south, everything's going to be fine. So that's the level of difficulty, the level of pressure that you're under to get that forecast correct. And so I don't envy a lot of the forecasters back at our office and a lot of the forecasters in the National Weather Service, even the National Hurricane Center, given how critical and how much is at stake at getting this forecast correct.
Absolutely. It's all about the safety and the science, Mark. I mean, that's really what everyone here is trying to do in order to keep people safe. Now, we've got a live look right here at Naples, Florida. And something that's interesting that's happening here, you can actually start to see the water is kind of moving from side to side. And it poses a question for me from this Earth Cam shot right here for Tyler. Tyler, we were quite concerned earlier about the timing of the landfall of this storm and potentially combining that with the actual high tide coming in. What does this new timing as the storm is sped up, does that help with that? Is that hurt with that? Are we going to see more storm surge with the new timing?
Well, I think there is a little bit of a silver lining here with the tide being lower. The high tide was forecast really through the pre-dawn hours, late pre-dawn hours, Thursday, 5, 6 a.m., Michael. But it's not really going to make that much of a difference with the tidal cycle. We're still forecasting really significant and catastrophic storm surge. And we're getting the latest power outage numbers in. So the eye of Hurricane Milton is still drifting about 90 to 100 kilometers southwest of Sarasota. Our power outage numbers statewide are now over 120,000 customers without power. And we're still several hours from this making landfall. So you can extrapolate what kind of state the power grid will be in by the time we head into Thursday morning. So here's the tidal data. We're just cherry picking here, Tampa Bay, to give you an idea. That high tide coming in at 6:11 a.m. So we are closer to a more low tide cycle right now, as that tide will continue to increase through the overnight periods. But the tidal cycle compared to these storm surge figures of 3 to 4.5 meters. I can't stress how historic this would be. If this verifies in the city of Tampa, we are dealing with severe and extreme impacts associated with a storm surge like this, because you go back a couple weeks ago, we had record-breaking storm surge in Tampa Bay proper. We recorded storm surge anywhere between about 6 to 8 feet, and that did significant damage all around the Tampa Bay region. And that forecast right now is showing that, 2, 3, 3.5, 4 meter storm surge for Tampa. You're pushing above that first story, and that is quite concerning when it comes to shelter, for example. And I'm afraid some homes just simply won't exist along the immediate coastline after this storm moves inland, Michael.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we continue to sort of harp on this conversation around storm surge, and why we say when you are told to evacuate by your local officials that those are the people that you need to listen to and get out of town. Now, let's take a quick look at where we stand right now with Hurricane Milton on the latest information. We are at a Category 3 with Hurricane Milton. That's right where we thought it would be as it made its way to landfall and began to weaken just a bit. We're at wind speeds right now of around 195 kilometers per hour, and as we mentioned earlier, that's plenty fast enough to be able to pick up the leftover debris from Hurricane Helene and start tossing that around. Now, a lot of people at home right now are probably thinking, well, I've secured everything around my house, I should be fine. Well, that debris unfortunately is going to be tossed around quite a bit, and there's going to be new debris coming your way from this storm as well. With the pressure right now, we're at about 948 millibars. And we've actually seen it pick up throughout this entire live stream with the quickness. We're now at northeast, or it's moving about northeast at around 28 kilometers an hour. And obviously we're continuing to keep an eye on just when that landfall is coming your way.
Now notice the pressure decreased a couple millibars as well, Michael, so that situated right now about 100 kilometers southwest of Sarasota, and there is really a torrential band of rain sitting north of Sarasota up towards Tampa Bay. These rainfall rates, an inch or two an hour on the extreme end, so it is causing likely flooding in and around the Tampa Bay region. And I want to walk through one final time what some of these wind speeds over the next few hours may occur in the Tampa Bay region. Now keep in mind there's about a dozen buildings in Tampa Bay above 30 stories or 300 feet, 100 meters metric. So the wind speeds aloft can be, sometimes 20, 50% higher wind gusts. These are surface wind gust forecasts for the Tampa Bay metro region of 130 to 150 kilometers an hour. We are going to have high rises with blown out windows. We can hope we can catch a break with the storm surge in and around Tampa Bay and Old Tampa Bay. Water will be highly erratic at these low-level regions, these low-lying regions rather, and that storm surge will be switching direction and then come out of the west. So those barrier islands are highly susceptible to that westerly winds. Now further south, deeply concerned about the region in and around Charlotte Harbor, Port Charlotte. That storm surge could be severe as Charlotte Harbor acts as a funnel, essentially amplifying that storm surge effect to 3, 4, 4.5 meters above sea level. Sarasota to Tampa, likely going to take the strongest hurricane force winds, sustained winds 100, 140 kilometers an hour with those gusts higher. And then that westerly wind really wraps around. So StormHunter Mark may get a period of calm weather in that eye around 7, 8 p.m. But once that hurricane pushes inland and weakens to Category 1, we'll get those winds whipping out of the northwest. So it is a 1-2 punch, and unfortunately it is occurring in one of the more densely populated regions of Florida. You see that region in and around Tampa Bay, over 1,000 people per square mile. So that is Very concerning. We'll keep you up to date. Here's a live camera, courtesy of EarthCam, showing that storm surge pushing inland. Our team coverage will continue, and we will be live streaming on all platforms as the eye of Hurricane Milton pushes inland over the next few hours.